All right, I gotta stop my music. It's 3 nights though. All right, surprise, surprise, surprise. I'm going live early today, and y'all pray for my lash. This one, because the lash glue is a little low. So I couldn't figure out how to make StreamYard work with me and adjust this so I could just record it. So here we are. I'm just gonna go live. Happy hour starts early for me. In case you didn't know, I make my own schedule still. Hey. That will be changing because I do still have other corporate aspirations. This is just one corporation I'm a part of. Okay. So actually I've been getting over a cold. So I have to have orange juice and vitamin C and all kinds of other healthy stuff. I forgot to take my black seed tea tree oil pill from my friend, but I'll get to that. But yeah, it's happy hour, y'all. Let's get happy. And pray for my lash, seriously though. Curl Bible and I need to have a reconvening. I am an ambassador, but I've been slacking. So I'm just letting people know I went on early, and they can catch behind the scenes, I suppose. I'll be honest, I'm actually a little concerned about one of my friends too, because I did not get back to her, and I feel like that's something she might have needed, and she hasn't been responding. But that could be a lot of things, so I'm trying not to worry about that. So yeah, I am set up to go live with this phone. I didn't bring the other holder, so I'm not gonna simultaneously go live with Instagram, and we'll just do a little bit on Facebook like I usually do, and a little bit on Instagram unless I forget, which happens too. But it's Tuesday, y'all, and I kicked off the Firestarters podcast early. I am the creator. I am the chief evolution officer of Love Inspired Teach E, LITE for short. And Love Inspired Teach E started off as a blog, and it started off as a blog that was kind of a guide to how I was getting through a lot of different things in my life. And I'm a lot of different things. Obviously, if you follow me in any way, shape, or form, I own that I am a family person. I am a mom. I'm a sister. I'm a woman. I am a person, a human being. And the past few years, we all know, have been very, very unpredictable, right? So given that, what did we need to do to take care of ourselves? There was a lot of fires lit. There was a lot of fires lit related to George Floyd. There was a lot of fires lit related to verdicts, not even just him, multiple verdicts. There's just been fires lit with companies and their restructuring and reorganization and quiet resignations going on, and all different things happening and changing for the better. Let's be positive. Let's believe it's all for the better, right? So what I decided to podcast about today, which I didn't announce, the October schedule is going to come out. I decided I'm going to stop being last minute with y'all on these topics, partly because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We're going to do a little bit of both, but we're going to start off with Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I'm not going to hone in on that. That's going to be my nonprofit thing later, but I want to talk about risk assessment. So you got to take calculated risks, and that's in many different areas of your life. If you follow the podcast at all, you know that I tend to do the topics of relationships, not just like love life. I'm talking about business relationships, your financial relationship. I do talk about finances. I talk about health and wellness and spirituality. So I touch on all those different things. And I do that because we don't live in a vacuum. As much as we like to silo things and we want to learn everything possible, the internet gives us, computer competence, screen competence, whatever you want to call it. We try to take calculated risk. And the fact of the matter is sometimes shit happens, right? Shit happens to all of us, and we just deal with it. But when it comes to calculated risk, what does that mean? It means that you can't control everything, right? There's inherent risk in everything. Now, I could Google the true definitions of what all this means. I could put it in financial terms for you. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a medical professional, even though I've worked in healthcare. But let's talk about the word inherent. It just means that it exists. It's there, right? So there's always some level of risk to all the things that we do. Like I could walk out my front door and get hit by lightning. What are the chances? The calculated risk says is very slim, so I have no problems walking out my door. But if you ever watch that movie, I think it was called Maniacs. If you ever watch this old school movie, dude was afraid to leave his house. He had to wrap himself in foil, I think, for love. He went out his house for love and said, screw inherent risk, right? He decided to take a calculated risk about wrapping himself in foil, whatever that was going to do. I think it was counterproductive, but whatever makes you feel comfortable. But let's talk about calculated risk in many different aspects of life, right? So when you talk about, let's start with my favorite one, okay? Let's talk about the less, well, it is serious, but it doesn't have to be serious. Let's talk about it in your relationships. So calculated risk with your friends. Let's start with friends, right? When you go out with your friends, somebody, hopefully in your crew, you know is reliable and will take care of everybody, right? Like if somebody goes off the deep end and didn't hold their liquor properly, maybe they were going through it with the husband or wife or whatever the situation may be, you got to have somebody who's gonna reel everybody in, keep everybody intact. Or like, let's say you go out by yourself and you know you have someone you can call on or lean on, or calculated risk. Let's talk about at work, right? You share carefully at work. There's a political correctness to most corporations. Now, there's some that talk about, work-life balance and company culture and diversity and inclusion. Those invisible boundaries are still there. Calculated risk in your conversations with your coworkers and whoever else you interact with, clients, internal customers, external customers, whatever the case may be. Whether you consciously do it or unconsciously, subconsciously, whichever word's right, you take calculated risks in navigating those spaces, okay? Let's talk about finances. When you decide to purchase a home, when you decide to purchase insurance, auto or home or renters or condo or whatever, and I will own up to, I'm going into that field, so that one is near and dear to my heart right now. But you take calculated risk. So I talked about your friendships, your business at work relationships, your financials. Even when you select your 401k portfolio, your stocks, there's calculated risk to that. And usually, and I would hope in most cases, you're hiring an advisor. Even I hired an advisor. People I know that are C-level executives still have advisors, okay? My dad works for a billionaire. I know one awesome thing about Mr. Reinsdorf was always that he would say he doesn't mind not being the smartest person in the room because he's hopefully hired people that are smarter than him, but he enjoyed being the final decision maker. So calculated risk, right? He's hiring people he trusts and he's taking a calculated risk on their opinion, but also ultimately determining his own decision based on his own life experiences. So there we have it. Calculated risk, right? And that was kind of in the relationship realm. And I touched on the financial realm a little bit, but even in your health and wellness, you take calculated risk there, right? Like you could go out, play flag football or play rugby or soccer or swim. And I spoke with this woman who I was interviewing somewhere, and she was talking about how she shattered her heel jumping off a waterfall that several other people had jumped off of already and shattered her heel. And she had to take like an hour hike to get where she was going. And luckily there were like 2 firefighters that carried her back down the mountain because there was no cell signal. But she took a calculated risk. Like multiple people had already gone out and jumped down the waterfall. And I've cliff jumped before. I've been to Jamaica. I'm a risk taker. I like adventure. And in her health and wellness sphere, I'm sure she didn't think that was going to happen. And when I talked with her more, she even said, I would not do that again. And They are a calculated risk. In her situation, she probably just didn't want to go through that whole rehab situation all over again. And I don't blame her. I still would go cliff diving, though, I have to say. Cliff jumping, diving. I'm not sure what the distinction is, but regardless, I still have a little adventure left in me. Or even when I went skydiving. Have any of y'all been skydiving? Anybody? Since this ended up being live, even though that wasn't totally my intention. So skydiving. Guess what? If you've never done it, let me share with you. I went tandem, meaning somebody else was on my back and he had a parachute, but there was always a backup parachute. So for me, why not go ahead and take this calculated risk? I've heard it's fun. I know many people have done it successfully. There's some people where it becomes their way of life even. They do acrobatics and like put their arms out and do all that cool stuff. And then when you watch stuff like Fast and Furious and different, action shows, they make it look so easy and simple. Or if you become, I've been introduced to David Goggins. He's like this Marine, special unit Marine, something or another. He's hardcore. He's single too. I see why. He's dedicated to all those marathons and things he does. But in that space, like he was talking about how he's practicing the weighted dive, something like that. But for him, calculated risk. So, that's in the health and wellness space because you could die. Not everybody's ready to die. I have very different views on death, so we won't even go into that right now. But what I will talk about next is even when you choose your church, because I am going to, touch on spirituality just a tiny, tiny bit, because I do believe in having faith in something. You don't have to have faith in a religion because religion's a hot topic that I don't like to debate. I chose what I chose for my own personal reasons. You choose what you choose for your own personal reasons, but I have an interest in all of them. I went to Duke. They have a divinity school, so it's a lot of interesting things you can learn about religion. But when you're choosing, you're kind of taking a calculated risk, right? You're going to buy into this system of beliefs that somebody created. And I believe it has to be man-made, right? Because the unseen things, like I've never seen a pen writing by itself, honestly. But, unless it, like, aside from like the theatrical versions of it. So you take calculated risk when you decide to buy into one of those systems for whatever reason. A lot of people buy into those systems because it gives them something to lean on when times are hard and rough. So that brings me to, why do we even bother to take calculated risk? Because we need to live life with passion, right? And the whole point of life is not to like be a little lemming, follow along the path and jump off the cliff. I'm telling my age now when I talk about lemmings, right? but it's an old school video game where, you're trying to guide the lemmings to get to the next level or whatever. But life is meant to be lived and it's not going to be perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. And I'm a recovering perfectionist. I say it all the time. I have type A tendencies because I've tried to reduce them. But I've had to learn to accept there are many things that are out of my control. But what I do accept is I can take calculated risk. So like I mentioned early on, yes, I'm in corporate America. This is an LLC, but I still want to be in other parts of corporate America. I enjoy being a part of the best of the best. I want my company to be the best, but it's still growing. So I take calculated risk. And with that in mind, anything that I do personally, there has to be passion behind it. I've been in sales and marketing. If you know me or if you've watched me before, you've heard me talk about, I've worked in sales and marketing for over 20 years. I apologize. My dog hates being locked up, but she'd be making a lot of noise at the people at the window. So my apologies for the interruption. Hopefully it's not too bad. But let me get back on track. So what I was saying is that you have to have a passion for what you're doing. So having worked in sales and marketing, I've always said I prefer to talk about and educate people about products I believe in, or a pipeline. For my first job, I worked in pharma. I have to have a pipeline I believe in. I have to know that there's quality behind it, that we're going to change and innovate in a way that's going to be impactful. Because at my core, I love helping people. My kids are going to be grown and do their own thing, and I'm going to have to find new people to help besides my little ones. So at my core, any company I work with in the sales and marketing space, I want to believe in their product, know that it has value, and that it creates passion for me. So if I am passionate about something, I'm willing to take those calculated risks. So hopefully y'all are following along with me, okay? I'm going to add Instagram. I said I wasn't going to do it simultaneously, but I think I'm going to go ahead and try. We'll see, because I don't have a holder for this other phone. So that means I'm going to lean it on something. Or actually, I really prefer, I'm going to end our Facebook Live, and I'm going to encourage you guys to go to the business page on Facebook or to YouTube so you can continue watching and following along if this is starting to sound of value to you, okay? And letting you know a little bit more about me. So thank y'all for joining on Facebook. Switch over to Instagram for a snippet, or go to YouTube or the business Facebook page for the full podcast. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and switch that out. And while I switch that out, I want to give you guys a little commercial break and remind you that you should like, subscribe, share, comment. If you're watching the replay, thank you. But you should also check out the website. You can check out the website for blog articles. You can check it out for upcoming events. You can check it out for merch. But check it out, okay? It's a good place to go and learn a little bit more about Love Inspired Teachee, besides what I ramble on and on about at the podcast. I really try not to ramble. I really do try to have a purpose. So I think talking about calculated risk, talking about your passion, having a product you believe in is all important, and they're all connected. And behind the scenes, talking about calculated risk, or risk in general, really, but calculated risk and why we do it. And that's what I was on, why we do that. Because if you're passionate about something, it's easier and you're more comfortable taking those risks, right? And while you definitely should always go outside your comfort zone, you grow the most when you push yourself to the limits of your comfort, right? But there's a balance. We've all got to find that balance between taking a risk, understanding ourselves and our passions so that we can be effective. I've been in a lot of different companies, and they ask you in many different ways to share what drives you. And in all those different ways that they do that is essentially asking you what gets you out of the bed in the morning, or what is your why? Have you ever heard that question? What is your why? Why do you do things? And everybody gives a different answer. Whatever answer you give, underlying all that it basically means there's a passion that you have for that. And that's why you can move into this area of discomfort. You can get uncomfortable. You can begin to take those calculated risks, which is our overall topic for today, taking calculated risks. So the reason why we take calculated risks is we find something we're passionate about, and we want to excel and improve and grow. And in order to do that, to even contemplate the idea of going outside of your comfort zone, you have to figure out what you're passionate about. You have to decide what your why is. Thank y'all for joining on Instagram. I just added y'all and gave y'all the live. But really, if you want the full, I've been going for about 20 minutes, a little under 20 minutes. The full podcast is always at YouTube and our Facebook business page. So facebook.com/Love Inspired Teach E, short for Love Inspired Teach Evolve LLC. And if you're at a crossroads in life, if you are feeling like you've got these tough decisions to make and you don't know which path to go, and you want to go the tried and true, and you want to go the safe route, you're not probably going to grow too much by that. you're really going to find that without discomfort, you're just coasting, you're being complacent, you're staying in the same spot. And if that's what you want, if you feel like you're in paradise and you're going to stay in paradise and paradise is set, good for you. I'm not knocking it. Stay there. Enjoy it. Shoot. I've been looking for paradise myself sometimes. But I always know that at some point reality is going to kick in. At some point, life is going to remind me that there's more for me to learn and grow from. And I'm always setting an example for the little eyes that are watching, whether they're my kids or someone else's kids. There are always people looking to you, whether you want them to or not, whether they're your supporters or your haters. There are people watching you to see what's next, right? And you take those calculated risks and you push yourself into new spaces. So you can still have some level of comfort. So for example, like I said, I've worked in sales and marketing for over 20 years. I may not look it. It's the truth. I have owned that. People consistently tell me I don't look my age. I don't look 41. I am 41 proud years old. Okay. 40 years young, as my grandma would say. I love her. She always says, "How young are you?" But I've been in sales and marketing. Now, what's interesting, as I've learned, and as I share a little bit more about my background, I've been in sales and marketing for over 20 years, but I've switched industries. I've switched spaces. And you always have to explain yourself when you do that. They're like, "Oh, it looks like you've hopped around." I'm like, "No, actually, I've always stayed in sales and marketing. I've always enjoyed educating people because I really, truly believe sales and marketing is more education. It's just packaged differently and pays better." It's the truth. It pays better if you're in sales and marketing and you're educating people about products they're interested in. They just don't understand the gap between their needs and their wants, and you have to bridge that gap. And I've moved in different spaces that all of which I've had a genuine interest in and some level of passion for. So I'm an economics major. I majored in economics at Duke University. I'm a Blue Devil. Go Blue Devils. I don't think our football team's doing well this year. There's been years they've been doing well. I don't keep track very well. Homecoming's coming up. It might even be this weekend, but I'm a terrible alumni when it comes to stuff like that. My bad. But to get back on topic, what I will say is that I was an econ major who did my internships in investment banking and was like, I'm not sure if this is the space for me. So I went into healthcare because everyone said it was this great opportunity to work in pharmaceuticals. I was a legal pill pusher. I was a legal drug dealer. I will say for any type of drug dealer, legal or not, I think they're very intelligent people. You have to know a lot of medical jargon. You have to know a lot about your product. You have to understand the politics behind it, like policy changes that are coming up. You have to understand the laws related to it, whether legal or not. You have to understand it. And let's be honest, there's been a shift when it comes to cannabis. That's very intriguing. Maybe I did meet somebody who I was supposed to talk about that with. But regardless, it's a very interesting space to be in. I've always enjoyed healthcare. I'm half Filipino. If you know anything about Filipino culture, you would understand that everybody is either a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer. That is like the funnels you're supposed to go in. I clearly bucked against the trend somewhat because I went into healthcare, so I could say that a little bit and still save face around my Filipino side of my family. And it was great. It was interesting. Then I had a manager change. That was an unforeseen risk I couldn't account for. Okay. So then I took the calculated risk and went back to investment banking. So I went back to finance. I went healthcare, finance. Then I went back into healthcare. And then I went into technology for a telecommunications company. Okay. But always sales and marketing, and every one of those decisions was a calculated risk, because when I moved from healthcare into investment banking, I still knew, interestingly enough, a lot of doctors obviously need help in building their practice and building their business, and they have a strong interest in finance. So I could still leverage some of those relationships. I didn't have to because of the way I went into investment banking, the role I was in. And then when I left investment banking and went back into healthcare, I could still maneuver. And then interestingly enough, when I moved from healthcare into technology, I still was able to tie what I was doing into one another because I had worked primarily at that second stint in healthcare in the senior living space. So by working in the senior living space, I took a calculated risk by switching into technology because in the state of Illinois, they were having finance issues at the government level when it came to Medicare and Medicaid. And so I took the calculated risk of going into technology, thinking again, it's a secure industry. Calculated risk. Technology is still experiencing some of those supply chain woes. So I have a friend that works as a VP in the computer hardware space. And I'll never forget when he told me that, he works, HR type position, but VP nonetheless. He had to cancel like 80% of his requisitions, his, career openings, because they couldn't even fulfill their orders due to the supply chain issues. So all that reminded me is that there's nothing guaranteed in life, right? We can't calculate everything, but we can calculate some of it. So hopefully you guys on Instagram have enjoyed this behind the scenes, but I am going to end it because I want to encourage you to get to YouTube, and I want to encourage you to come on over to our Facebook business page, okay? So thank you for checking us out. Share, comment, let me know what you thought. Let me know if you think I should have dug deeper into something, but I'm going to end this one now because you guys are behind the scenes and a slight distraction because I keep looking over to them. So thank you guys. Have a great night. So let me type a little message. I'm going to take the opportunity to do a little commercial break yet again. That means you guys are supposed to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment, share, all that good stuff. And then I honestly wish I had someone to prompt me on what I was, where I had taken us, because I try to keep track of what I'm talking about, and I do have a brief outline, but it's easy to get a little sidetracked if I'm being totally honest. So that's done. I was talking about, it will come to me because the overall topic is calculated risk. Really need like a review or a prompter at this point. Let me ponder this. Calculated risk, making sure you're passionate about what you do, tying everything together. Oh, I was talking about how we can't account for everything, hence the fact that risk is always going to be there, right? So what we talked about so far, what does it mean as far as calculated risk? We've talked about inherent risk. We've talked about it in different aspects of your life. We've talked about the fact that whatever risk you're taking, make sure it's related to your passion, your why, where, like your foundation, where you're starting from, right? And then we've also talked about, what I wanted to get to was next steps, right? If you've determined there's a certain level of risk and you've determined there's like this tiny portion of it that's very highly unlikely to happen, do you do anything about that? That's my question to you all. With that 0.01%, or maybe it's 1%, or maybe it's even 3%, do you address that? Remember, I also said today, I am a recovering perfectionist. I have type A tendencies. So if you're like me, you account for that. Let me be honest. You still account for that because I like to be prepared. There's nothing wrong with being prepared. And if you've been doing something for so long, the other things have become easy. So preparing for that tiny percentage of something happening, it's not that time consuming. It's not that far-fetched to address, right? And honestly, you get really good at the things you're good at so that you can grow in other areas of your life. You get really good. And let me repeat that. You get really good at the areas of your life that you're good at so you can grow in the other areas that you're not so good at. You also hire people in those areas that you're not so good at and let them teach you. So there's kind of a two-pronged approach to address that calculated risk. The other thing I mentioned that I didn't put in the review, in order for us to all grow, we have to operate in uncomfortable spaces. The only way to grow is to experience some level of discomfort. I'm trying to think if there's exceptions to that. I don't know too many exceptions to that. You're not going to grow if you're always comfortable. You're going to be stagnant. And when you're stagnant, there's this thing called atrophy. If you know what atrophy means, it means you actually start to regress and deteriorate. We'll use big words today. Let me prove I went to Duke. That's not even proof. I actually have my diploma somewhere nearby. I was on a different podcast, but I did go to Duke. And I find it entirely intriguing that so many people who know about Duke University give it so much weight. And I always think to myself, if there's one thing I learned from going to Duke is I know this much. There was always somebody way smarter than me and that knew so much more. Hence, me understanding the importance of calculated risk. All right. So never discount the importance of calculated risk. So where are we at? Again, calculated risk versus inherent risk. Make sure that you have your passion clear, your inherent why, your foundation set. Make sure that you understand that you can't plan for everything, but you want to always operate in discomfort. And when you get really good at something, I think it was the last podcast, I recommended a book called Strength Finder 2.0. I still recommend that. But you want to grow, right? And so you lean into your strengths for sure. But there's nothing wrong with also finding those little areas of your life, that 0.1%, that 1% of area that you think is unlikely to happen, but you teach yourself more and grow in that area, right? And the other thing I want to segue into is investing in yourself. Like, I use the term calculated risk because in a lot of ways, at least for me, and maybe it's the econ background I have, but I always affiliate it more with finances, right? Calculated risk. But the other key to that is that there's an investment, right? If you're taking a risk, you're also investing in the idea that there's opportunity to be had. So when you make an investment, what do? I hope that you research, okay? So calculated risk means we must do some research as well. And again, let's go into the different areas of topics that Firestarters goes into. We talk about relationships in all its different forms. We talk about health and wellness. We talk about finances. We talk about spirituality. And you have to do your research in all those different areas. So when you do your research, do you only take on anecdotal evidence, or do you also expand it into actually going into printed resources, books, magazines, documented data that's been given sources that they had to double and triple check? It's so funny. One of my old Duke colleagues, he was not a professor of mine. He was like an advisor to, I think, the Black Student Alliance, or most likely Black Student Alliance, not likely to be Asian Student Alliance, but it's possible. But he was an advisor, and he's at the professor level, so he's done that whole academia bureaucracy going up that food chain. And it's so funny because he talks about how most people don't understand how many times they have to double, triple check their sources and verify their data, right? So they can do as many studies as they want and use those studies in presenting their thesis and their dissertation and all that good stuff. But then they have to provide sources for their sources and fact checked and whatnot. But all I'm bringing this up to say is you always have to do your research, okay? The internet and social media make it really easy to believe that you can take the easy way out, the shortcut, and just rely on what somebody you know and trust told you. But they could have got it from somebody else they know and trust, who got it from Joe Schmo off a parody website. And then you all are a little bit screwed, right? Because it wasn't a good source. Do your research, check your sources, and look out for flags. Now, I'm not the best or biggest sports person, but I do know red flag's an easy one. That's usually a bad sign. Yellow's cautionary, white's a surrender, green means go, and there might be some other flags. Oh, checkered flag means you finished, depending on the sport. But that terminology is helpful because you want to, even if you see like a yellow flag, that just means proceed with caution, right? Red flag means you really, there's something that you should take as valid, and you need to give heed to it and stop. Just stop, pause, take a step back, reevaluate. Maybe the timing's wrong. So I just want to say, do your research. Do your research. Figure out your passion. Why do I keep forgetting the middle one? Whatever that middle one was. But also do your research. And it's going to bug me. So I'm going to have to rewatch this and write it down better. It's going to come to me later. It's not coming back right now. And I know it was important. All right, fine. Whatever. Do your research. And then also when it comes to calculated risk, the last thing I'm going to say is lean into that. Oh, duh. The whole discomfort idea. So figure out your why. Understand that discomfort is necessary. Do your research. And then the final thing is, and I'm going to piggyback off of last week, take action. You got to take action. What's the whole point of doing all this research and taking calculated risk if you're not going to do anything with it? The risk in it is that you do plan on taking action, right? So I'm going to take a pause there so I can go ahead, do one more commercial break, but I also wanted to give a decent amount of time to this topic because it's a little near and dear to my heart. Because in case you didn't know, one of the other things to know about me is that I am a survivor of domestic violence. It was very hard to own up to the fact that someone had put hands on me, and it felt like this out-of-body experience, like, I'm too smart, this could never happen to me, but it did. And I didn't want to tell anybody. I felt stupid. I felt like my family was going to be like, I told you so. I just didn't want to hear it. So I want to dedicate some time to the fact that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that men and women can be in abusive situations. And domestic violence doesn't always have to be physical. It can be emotional abuse, financial abuse, verbal abuse. They're all way heavy on our minds, okay, and our spirits. So I'm going to take a little bit of time out to share, and then I'll probably go back and review and wrap everything up. But I wanted to share with you all about a place that I donate to, that when I did the Shop and Sip, I think it was in May, in conjunction with Bronzeville Boutique. So shout out to my friends at Bronzeville Boutique, Treva and William. They're awesome sauce. So if you're ever in Chicago, in the Bronzeville area, make sure to check them out. They're on 43rd and King Drive. But we donated healthcare and beauty items to Margaret's Village. So let me go ahead and share my screen and pull up the tab for Margaret's Village so I can share with you guys. Like, I definitely felt like I came full circle when I went there to do the drop off for this specific event, because I finally had to admit that there was a reason why, beyond my friend telling me about them, but there was a reason why I kept wanting to support them. And it's because I could have easily have been one of those women. I didn't have to go to a transitional housing place. Technically, I was never homeless, although I felt like it because I was facing some really serious financial difficulties with my first condo. But Margaret's Village is in, I believe, the Inglewood area of Chicago. They have programs and services to help women and children and families. I didn't know they had enrichment activities for seniors, but they help them in their transition to a new home. And they all look out for one another. Every time I've gone there, it's interesting to see the women and talking to the children. So this is literally... So I'm going to go back. This is literally where I go. I go into this door whenever I drop off items. Yeah, so this is the Maria Shelter, is the 50-bed interim shelter in Inglewood for women primarily, but they have other locations. So we'll go ahead and move on. I'm not familiar with the Believe Shelter, Vincent Senior Center. That's got to be right next to the Maria Shelter. But they help hundreds of women each year, and like, they're just trying to survive and do better for themselves, but in some cases they might not know what that looks like. So they definitely want volunteers. Every place always needs money, and they accept donations in kind. Let's see. So they did a virtual gala. I thought they were doing one this year. I apologize. I thought, my memory is like not always the greatest, but I could have swore there was info on the gala for this year. That may be in my email, but I didn't want to pull that up. But there's many different ways to get involved. I typically just donate in kind, but you can actually volunteer at the shelter. They have so you can donate financially, donate personal items. They do have a wish list, and they do have some capital projects, and you can become a volunteer as well. And this is just updates about how much you can help them with monetary donations. But I have to say that when I've gone, the people there, you just get this sense of community, right? And with that sense of community, I find that it lets me know that if my situation had become that dire, I would have been okay. I would say, for me, luckily, my ex-husband ended up being the one that was homeless. I was the one who was more financially stable, or at least in a better situation with a much better support system than he had. But it's nice to know that even in times of difficulty, there are people out there that still care and that can look out for you. And when you take that risk on love, or you take that risk on someone you think you can depend on, that calculated risk, and it doesn't work out, please keep your faith. Please know that there will always still be people there that are going to catch you when you fall, without expecting you to like pay them back or have all the answers. They're just literally there to support you. So when you take calculated risks, that can be the scary part of it. So let's get back to what the topic at hand. But so it is definitely near and dear to my heart, because I've debated. I was like, what am I going to do? Because let me tell the truth, I haven't got my mammogram yet. So I really do need to be very conscious that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I need to get that done. And I used the pandemic. Oh, I shouldn't say. I literally did feel the pandemic. I was like, I don't want to go near any hospital to I don't care if it's a mammogram. I'm not trying to die of COVID. So cancer, in a lot of cases, can be more slow going than this COVID was at first. So, But at the same time, if you know enough about my history, you know that being divorced is not something I like talking about, but I've gotten more open with it. Being a survivor of not just domestic violence, but rape, these are uncomfortable topics. So when I have this podcast about calculated risk, but also moving outside your comfort zone, these are the things that spur me, because I had to make a lot of calculated risks when I decided I was going to first legally separate from my husband and then second, go ahead and divorce him. Was not a very easy decision to make, and I had to assess the risks of staying married to someone who could financially ruin me, hence doing the legal separation. But I am of that old school thought. I really wanted it to be my one and only marriage, and there was just a deal breaker involved. So I am a divorcee, but it's okay, right? So I took some calculated risk. And it impacted me financially. It impacted my relationships with others. My health became at risk, obviously, domestic violence. And, I really had to lean into my faith. It tested my faith for sure. But that's what inspires some of these Firestarter conversations. They're not comfortable. They're not going to be these, oh, kumbaya, warm yourself by the fire, get some s'mores conversations. Sometimes they're like, this is hot and heavy and not the greatest place to be. It's risky, right? It's risky to share my story sometimes. It's risky to say that financially speaking, there are some things if you see a red flag where someone is trying to give you easy money, you really want to research. Like, I really want to tell you to run, but next week we're going to talk about cryptocurrency. Drew has dabbled in it and sounds like had success in it. I know several other people who've had success in it. Bitcoin is still around. Cryptocurrency is here to stay. If you know anything about NFTs and Twitter, there are opportunities that normally people would tell you it's a red flag, but this is where calculated risk comes in and where doing your research becomes entirely critical. So I do want to emphasize that. Yes, if you see a flag, it can even be red. And if you're like me, I always say this. I'm one of those people where if they say there's a gun in the room, I'm going to be like, is it a real gun? Like, prove it. I'm that person. So even though it's a red flag, I'm hard-headed. Very hard-headed. It's getting softer, though. But there are opportunities and risks. That's why I say calculated risk. And risk is opportunity in a lot of cases. And if you have the wherewithal and the strength, go for it. I'm not going to say don't do what you think is best for you. And I do think there is value in trusting your gut. And if you have more experience than me in finances, then you're going to be able to withstand those kind of risks, right? So, like, for instance, I want Drew to tell his story, but Drew had, I'm not going to call it a windfall, but he had a situation that created an opportunity for him financially to try different things. And I was really excited for what he was able to do and achieve with that. But he also had some lessons to go along with that. So that's just a little preview about next week. We are going to talk about cryptocurrency and the opportunity with that. And I'm sure many people saw it as a red flag. And there are many scams out there. So don't let that fall to the wayside. That you still need to take that into consideration. But I am going to go ahead and wrap up a little early today because obviously I came on early for a reason. There's some things I need to get to that are really important to me, near and dear to my heart. But to wrap up what we covered today when we talked about calculated risk, we talked about understanding that there's always inherent risk, understanding what calculated risk means, making sure that you know your passion and your why and what's really the foundation behind it. And then we talked about making sure to really assess and I had a whole term for it. I don't know what my struggle is with that today, but going back to making sure you do your research and taking action. So make sure you cover all those things so that at the end of the day, you're making a decision that works well for you. And there's no one that can ever tell you the perfect answer or give you a crystal ball and say that everything's going to work out great. But there are certain things you can do to protect yourself, whether we're talking about in relationships, in your finances, your health and wellness, or even when you choose what faith you're going to walk into. You want to make sure that you do well with that. And how do you do that? Assess your calculated risk with those steps. So I hope you found value in this. I hope it brings some sense of just a little bit of weight and clarity, lifting some weight and giving you some clarity. And make sure to give me feedback. Let me know where you wish I had gone into a little more depth. And I totally missed. I keep missing that second part, but I'm gonna actually throw that one out there to you guys. If you were following along, I would love for you guys to put it in the comments so that myself and anyone who catches the replay can see, like, this is where TeMeka wanted to be consistent, and it was here it is, that discomfort, operating discomfort. That, like, I think mentally my brain just bucks against this idea of, like, promote the idea of operating in discomfort. Who wants to do that? But it's critical because it's what creates growth. So let me take my own advice. I'll put it in the comment area. In order to create growth, you must get uncomfortable. Okay? So I will leave it at that and do one final commercial break and remind you guys to like, subscribe, comment, share, hit the notification bell, check out our website in case you are ever interested in getting one-on-one coaching, group coaching, or if you want to attend any of our events. The podcast is every Tuesday. There's no cost for that right now. I've discontinued charging on Facebook. YouTube was always free, but Facebook, I was going to make that a little special area. That may resume in 2023. I decided all of 2022, we don't need to do all that. But we're going to focus on growth. We're going to focus on helping people. And if you check out our website, you'll see our vision is to help over 1 million people learn to operate in their light. And what does light mean? It means to love one another because the world needs more love. And how do we do that? By inspiring each other, teaching each other so we can all evolve. And so thank you again for watching. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate you. My name is TeMeka Williams. I am the creator and chief evolution officer for Love, Inspire, Teach, Evolve is actually our full name. We just shorten it to E to make it easier on y'all. And if you'd like, I didn't even do this today. If you'd like, feel free to check out our t-shirts. This is the women's t-shirt. It actually is the first edition in honor of my grandmother. It says Learn, Inspire, Teach, Evolve. It is very blingy. We're going to make some less blingy options, but check it out on the website. And we hope to continue to bring some value to you. So put your questions in the comment section. We'll be sure to respond. And we'll see you next Tuesday at 6:00 for the LITE Firestarters podcast. Have a great night. Love you guys. Bye.